Please note off over here to your right, you can see how the elevation is coming down from 5 to 6 feet. It's sloping on down and it's going into the back bay over here, so we're going down to sea level in here. So now we have what is known as a tidal swamp that comes in here. Now what do I mean by a swamp? A swamp is a wetland that's dominated by trees. Here are the trees. Contrary to that, we have a marsh, which is a wetland that's dominated by grasses. For example, the Everglades is a freshwater marsh. The Corkscrew Sanctuary is a freshwater swamp. Here we have a marine swamp. In the hammock, we had 30 or so major species that we could see of trees and shrubs. Here we only have 3 species and they're trees, and they're called mangroves. Well, now what are mangroves? Well, there's about 80 some species globally. They're typically a tropical tree. In fact, this is about as far north as mangroves go because they do not like cold weather. They cannot survive in cold weather. We have 3 species in here, and they're referred to as a, here is a white mangrove right here. As you can see, it is not quite white, but when it's younger, it's much more gray. Over here, in the distance there, that big tree over there, it's entirely black. That's a black mangrove. That's the tallest tree in here. And the third tree is the red mangrove, which has kind of got a crooked trunk like this. Has these roots down here, let's call them prop roots. And it has sort of a reddish color to it. Actually, this goldish color, reddish color here, is a lichen. It gets the name red because if we were to cut the trunk of the tree or a branch, the cross section inside of the tree would be entirely red. Now, getting back to what is a mangrove. There really is no such thing as a mangrove, but simply it is a category of all these species, 80 some species globally, that have developed a common strategy for surviving in this very difficult saline environment. And among those are the ability to support itself in a very, very weak substrate. If you look down here, the tide is out, but it did rain last night, and you can see just how mucky that is. So if this was a live oak, it would simply fall right over. So we have to have a way to support ourselves. And you see the red mangrove does it with these prop roots that go out. And sometimes they'll use drop roots that come down from branches that help support itself. Over here is the black mangrove. And you can't see their roots, but it's a radial root. It's very close to the surface. They come out like this in a fan. Like this. That's how it supports itself. And the white mangrove does something similar to that. Another thought is, how do these trees get oxygen? Well, trees breathe oxygen through their root system. Now, the red mangrove does it through their prop roots. The black mangrove does it through these little appendages that come up from the radial roots. See the little appendages right down there? Right there? All over down there. Those are called pneumatophores, and they're aerial roots. That's how the black gets its oxygen. Now the white also does the same thing. Now the white mangrove, by the way, likes higher elevation, so you really don't see it out here in the flooded area. Another problem that we have to deal with is salt. A lot of salt here. Now the way they do that is that they either exclude salt or they excrete it. Now, the red mangrove, through their root system, again, simply keeps it out, keeps the salt out, and it does that through these microscopic lentils that are in here. We can't see them. But it'll let water in, but it'll keep out salt. The black mangrove, on the other hand, takes in salt, and it excretes it through the back of the glands on the back of the leaf. So when I run my finger up there, I get salt. And the white mangrove does something similar. Now, the other question here too is, how do we reproduce? In the hammock, we have acorns, we have fruit, we have seeds. They fall to the ground, and if they don't get eaten by an insect or a bird, they'll germinate in 45 to 60 days. That won't work here in the saline environment. It won't survive at all. So how do they protect their seeds? And they do it with something called propagules. And these propagules are appendages that grow off the mangrove, and the embryo inside the propagule is alive. And it just so happens we have a few here. This is a propagule of a red mangrove, and while it's attached to the tree, that embryo is alive. Eventually it will fall to the ground, it will go out with the tide, and will wash ashore on a beach somewhere, and that's where I collected it several months ago. Here is a propagule of a black mangrove. It did the same thing. It floated around out there for several weeks in the water, came ashore on the beach, and actually it started to grow. So this is how they reproduce. Take those with me. And let's see, what else can we find in here? Oh yeah, these horrible looking things, these tumors. These are called galls. They're caused by a wasp that maybe 20-25 years ago came in here and got on the red mangroves. It only affected the red mangroves, and they injected a fungus into the bark of the red mangrove, and this is the red mangrove's response to it with these rather large tumors. They're called galls. They're insects, caused by insects. Now let's see what else we can find in here. Usually when it's dry, there's a lot of crabs running around down there, but don't see them today because it's pretty wet. Oh, there's one on the boardwalk here. Zipping along. That's the one over there. Turned on me. There we go. There's a snail right there. Looks like a little periwinkle. Well, here's a good view of the swamp. You can see the reds, they like to be real close to the water. You see all those walking roots in there? And the blacks, well, there's a few blacks in here. They like a little higher elevation. It's mostly the reds that are in here. A couple of blacks. And no whites, because whites really do not like to get inundated. Okay, I think that pretty much winds up our tour here of the Tidal Swamp.